I first noticed the missing constellations while filling out a routine inspection report. It was almost midnight, and my laptop screen reflected faintly in the windshield of the county sedan I parked beside a condemned split level on Henderson Road. I glanced up to orient myself. Polaris, Cassiopeia, the crooked squiggle of Draco, and felt a small, inexplicable jolt. The familiar W of Cassiopeia was incomplete. 3 points instead of 5, the shape broken, like a line of handwriting smudged by rain. I blamed fatigue, rubbed my eyes, and got on with the checklist the county preservation office had emailed me. The Henderson place was the 6th foreclosure I'd surveyed that month. Ever since the mills closed, residents had drifted out of Broadwater like silt in a river, leaving behind whole neighborhoods of peeling siding, mildewed furniture, and increasingly, peculiar alterations no bank could explain. A spiral staircase drilled through a living room floor. Doors to nowhere bricked up from inside. Windows facing walls. The strangest quirks always occurred in houses that shared one feature. Black chalk signs, like compass roses turned upside down, painted above basement lintels. Vagrants, the county archivist suggested. Teenagers. The explanation satisfied nobody, but it closed paperwork. Inside the Henderson split level, I smelled cedar sawdust, cold and resinous, as if someone had been building hours before I arrived. In the kitchen, every cabinet door had been removed. Tools lay scattered like surgical clamps across the linoleum. The basement door stood ajar. My flashlight picked out more chalk symbols descending the stairwell. I was tired, annoyed, and a little spooked by the absent stars, so I called out, "County Inspector? Anyone here?" Then started down. The basement was empty, except for a waist-high mound of timber in the center of the conference room. Blue carpeting, a staircase, or half of one. Broad, handsome treads of blackened cedar stacked but not installed, each plank sanded velvety smooth. The oddity was that the staircase wasn't attached to the floor above or the floor below. It simply began 2 feet off the ground and ended nowhere. My phone had no service. The signal died abruptly halfway down the basement stairs, as though the foundation were wrapped in lead. When the foundation were wrapped in lead, I photographed everything, filed a provisional report, and drove home, telling myself the missing parts of Cassiopeia must have been obscured by cloud. Yet the next night, the stars remained broken, and a second constellation, Aquila, looked short one wing. National news offered no explanation. Amateur astronomers flooded forums with photographs, numbers, panic. Some swore the stars had been there right up until dusk and gone by full dark. Satellites showed nothing. Where stars should have glimmered, instruments read zeros, black, deeper than cosmic microwave background. That was when I admitted what kept nagging me. The staircase lumber felt wrong. It had yielded no scent to my gloved fingertips, but when I brushed a bare knuckle over one tread, I sensed, not smelled, the sullen ember of something quashed. Like ash disguised as wood. I had studied astrophysics before student loan math throttled the dream. I'd spent dozens of nights in observatory domes, memorizing the sky's geometry. The cedar planks in that basement had warped the geometry inside my head. Anyone who has loved the stars knows when a line in their map goes missing. I asked the county archivist for building permits on file since the foreclosure wave started. 94 abandoned properties, 9 containing unregistered staircases. The corresponding 9 had all been purchased, briefly, by shell corporations with moss-colored logos, a coil of rope biting its own tail beneath the horizon. The moment permits were approved, the shells sold the houses to other shells and dissolved. A laundromat of deeds, scrubbing traces, but not quite scrubbed clean. The same engineer's signature repeated, Linden Cult. The surname pricked memory. In college, I'd audited a fringe architecture seminar. A guest lecturer, older, pallid, wide-eyed, the way subterranean creatures are had expounded on structures that lead away from measurable space. He'd shown slides of shafts sunk straight into bedrock, of catwalks suspended over quarry pits, of a maple staircase spiraling downward between two mirrors, so cleverly angled you could not see the bottom. Holt had called it negative ascension. I remembered his hissing whisper. A descent is only fall when the stars are watching. Remove the witness, and you rise through darkness instead of plummet. I Googled him. No resume, no publications. One addled blog entry listed him as chief joiner of something called the Perihelion Sacrament. I started dreaming about staircases. Each dream began in an ordinary house of my childhood. I lifted a trapdoor, climbed down 6 steps, and found myself under open, starless heavens where grass radiated its own faint sodium glow. Some nights I tried to climb back into the house, but the trapdoor vanished. I woke sweating, terrified by the awful silence of an unlidded cosmos. Cassiopeia gone, Aquila gone, and now Ursa Minor erasing star by star. The pole star flickered but held, like a candle stub in wind. Global networks of telescopes aimed fruitlessly at coordinates that ought to blaze. At my day job, the supervisor urged us to hurry through the backlog before federal disaster funds diverted to astronomical remediation mandates none of us understood. I volunteered to inspect 4 houses in a single afternoon, all linked to Colt's permits. I needed to see if each held a staircase. They did. In every basement a cedar stair, identical to the one on Henderson, some already installed, descending not through foundation concrete, but through wood planks so black my flashlight beam dissolved in midair. The portals exuded a pressure differential. Hair on my arms lifted as though the basement were a storm front. I tasted iron on my tongue. But the worst part was the view beyond the bottom tread. Night, horizonless. But not absence occupation. Something dwelled in the dark, waiting for anybody foolish enough to finish the climb. I sent photos to a former professor from university days, Dr. Arundel, a woman with a joint appointment in astrophysics and mythography. Her reply arrived 3:30 a.m. These match accounts of the Ulshel Nocturne. 1,387 us at time. They built staircases in barns. Legend says constellations vanished whenever a child reached the bottom, all burned at the stake before they completed the 13th set. Are those children in your pictures? God help us. There were no children in my pictures, thank God, but I kept remembering something else from Colt's lecture. The void is a promise. A mouth leaves room for words. A night leaves room for shapes without history. I typed a message to Dr. Arundel. Who benefits from a sky without stars? She answered. Anyone who wants to hide. That night, the news confirmed Gemini was gone. Headlights on interstates doubled accidents as drivers glanced up, distracted by the surgical scars across heaven. Someone hacked NOAA satellites and streamed images. Rectangular bands of nothing eating the Milky Way like parchment scorched line by line. I drove to Henderson Road at dawn, half hoping the cedar staircase had been repossessed by practical crooks looking for lumber, half fearing it had grown deeper. The basement door hung open, but the treads were intact, and more, they had installed themselves. Where yesterday the stack of boards lay inert, today a perfect flight descended into a mouth of soot. No nails, no glue, just seamless joinery. Every riser the same height, the same ink-dark grain. Tools lay exactly where I had found them days before, arranged like offerings, and on the top step a small leather notebook embossed with Colt's serpent ring horizon. I flipped it open. Pages watermarked by faint compass roses contained lists, written with a ruler's precision. Star 1, Shadar. Star 2, Cuff. Star 3, Alpharats. Dates, longitude, right ascension, magnitude, probable step tally. One column labeled witnesses had names, including mine, next to checkboxes. Mine was empty. Below the log, when the stairs complete, the sky recedes beyond memory. Who walks last retains history. The final page bore coordinates for a property at 11 Caldwell Lane, another foreclosure. I knew that house. A 2-story Queen Anne, unsold since a boiler explosion 5 years prior. Rumor insisted sunsets through its broken turret windows turned the parlor red as a fresh wound. I tried phoning Dr. Arundel. Call failed. Service across the county flickered like a dying fluorescent tube. Radio stations devolved into static or mantra-like chanting snippets repeated on loop. Roadside digital billboards displayed only an unblinking black circle. When I reached Caldwell Lane, a rust-eaten Subaru idled at the curb. A man sat in the driver's seat, door ajar, head bowed against the steering wheel. I tapped the roof. He lifted a face I recognized from an old faculty photograph. Dr. Ira Linden, once Arundel's colleague, long rumored missing. He'd aged in wrong directions, hair bleach white, but cheeks child plump, eyes watery and dark. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "Linden Colt?" He winced. "Name's Ira. Colt was my mother. She kept the surname for anger's sake." I told him about the staircases, the erased constellations, his own signature on permits. His laugh sounded like splinters. "I signed nothing. They forged it. Or I did, well, not myself. Listen." He gestured toward the Queen Anne's dark mouth. A hammer clanged below floor level. Yet the house had no power, no visible workers. "They're almost done," he whispered. "Once the carpenters install the final flight, the parallax will fold. The sky we know collapses into a single point, 18 steps left. Who are the carpenters?" He shrugged, hopeless. "Kids, vagrants, anybody aching for oblivion. The stair cult promises them erasure of debts, memories, grief. Step down, leave everything behind. They don't realize each footfall snuffs a sun older than language." Ario opened the trunk of his Subaru. Inside lay 2 sledgehammers, a gallon of kerosene, and a coil of climbing rope. "I tried fire already," he murmured. "Stairs drink light. They'll drink flame. But break a tread before it's installed and the corresponding star reignites. Only we're late." He pressed a folded sheet into my palm, a blueprint of the Queen Anne basement. 12 staircases, chained end to end, corkscrewing like DNA. They're building them nested now, each newel anchored to the void below the last. You cut the root, they all fall. "You ready to help?" I said yes before fear could mount objections. The parlors smelled wrong. Not dust, not mildew, but vacated cold. The temperature of breath exhaled by something that never needed lungs. Floorboards flexed as we crossed to the cellar door. Hammering stopped. Silence spilled from the threshold in thick waves. Ira flicked on a headlamp. The beam jittered tinder dry across stripped wallpaper scrawled with chalk sigils. Downward arrows, open circles, tally marks of steps perhaps. We descended the first of many cedar flights, ordinary stairs, recently built, each tread numbered in black grease pencil. On the riser of step 7, somebody had written, "Capella will go." On step 9, "Albaran will go." The cult wasn't random. They chose bright anchor stars, the skeletal pins of myths. Remove enough anchors, and the picture dissolves. The basement was gone. In its place stretched a cavernous shaft whose walls glimmered with vertical tar. Swallowduck, a scaffolding of staircases spiraled downward, every flight intersecting the next at odd angles, like an Escher print glimpsed through smoked glass. Now and then I saw motion. A teenager with a nail gun, a gray-heeled woman in a welder's mask, a bearded man tightening bolts. None of them spoke. They moved with entranced precision, eyes reflecting nothing. 30 carpenters? Ira breathed. 1 per remaining constellation. We crept to the base platform, where bundles of yet useless treads leaned. Each board felt impossibly heavy when I lifted it, as though gravity doubled inside the shaft. I brandished the sledgehammer. "Find the primary," Ira said, "the board with the serpent brand. It's the throat of every other flight." In the heap I spotted it, the horizon serpent knot. I raised the hammer, but a carpenter pale girl, maybe 16, stepped between us. Her pupils were blown, black, swallowing iris. "Hush," she said, almost kindly. "We're building night." Hammer over my shoulder. I hesitated. She laid a palm on the branded board. Above us, a star winked out with silent finality. I felt, rather than saw, the sky alter. The girl smiled, serene as a candle feeling wind before it gutters. I swung. The hammer crushed wood and bone together. She fell, wordless. The branded board split down the middle, oozing resin like clotted ink. All around, carpenters froze. Far away, echoing like thunder from the wrong direction, something groaned. Up in open sky, visible through the impossibly vertical shaft, a smear of starlight flared. I thought of Cassiopeia, of the crooked Y healing one missing vertex. The cult had not lied. Tread for star, damage reversible. Again, Ira urged. We smashed planks, ignoring the carpenter's keening. Each fracture launched a pinprick into the heavens above. Vega, Betelgeuse, dub name, hammered back into existence like nails reversed from wood. Yet whenever a board broke, a piece of the staircase we stood on also splintered, recession cascading upward. I realized we were unbuilding the ladder beneath our feet. Rope! I yelled. Iron looped the coil around an iron stanchion, bolted to concrete, the only natural fragment of basement wall left. We tied ourselves in alpine butterfly knots and kept breaking treads, leaping backward whenever the platform underfoot crumbled. The shaft howled. Wind, or whatever wind becomes when it blows from a starless realm. Carpenters scattered up, disrupting angles, shouting mantras that sounded like coordinates. Some tried to wrest the hammer from me. I caught one glancing blow to the temple and another to ribs that left me staggering. Still I swung, while Ira dragged boards onto steel grating for easier fracturing. At 17, boards shattered. The air brightened. It wasn't normal daylight, rather a colorless, washed, dissolving shadows. We had restored half a sky, but the void below gaped wider. I looked down, where stairs had been. Only a fuliginous membrane pulsed, alive with slow lightning. The floor we occupied was the last viable landing above that membrane. 5 more. Ira yelled over the roar. I nodded and raised the hammer. Pain knifed my rib cage. Breath came ragged. One carpenter hurled a nail gun. Brads clanged off the sledge's steel. I swung anyway. Board 18 cracked like ice. A pillar of light shot upward, and with it, memory. Catalina nights in my college observatory. The way comet tails stroked the retina hours after looking. Board 19 splintered under Ira's hammer. The membrane convulsed. I saw, or thought I saw, silhouettes moving inside the dark like embryos kicking against uterine walls. Beneath the pile, only 2 branded boards remained. We lifted the penultimate together, heavy as sin, as promise. We counted down from 3. Our hammers fell. A surge of luminous wind exploded from the fracture, ripping tools from hands, tossing us backward. Towering above us, my rope jerked taut. Carpenters shrieked. Some lost footing and tumbled into the membrane, which accepted them without splash. Stars bloomed overhead in a delirious avalanche. Orion's belt, Pleiades, Canopus, every missing jewel pouring back into position as though reality rewound. But one board still stood. Ira crawled coughing blood to the last serpentine plank. You'll need 2 hands, he wheezed. My arms! His right forearm dangled, wrist bent wrong. The explosion had broken bone. He held the board upright between his knees, presenting it to me like a supplicant chalice. The landing quivered. Splinters pinged off girders. The membrane below expanded, edges crawling up staircase remnants like mold-up walls. I gripped the hammer. Above, Polaris flickered again, misaligned slightly as if the cosmos were re-knitting, but threads tangled. I remembered Cult's note. Who walks last retains history. If we finish the undoing, would memory revert? Or would the sky restore but the world forget darkness ever existed? And what would that make of us who had walked half the void? Ira's gaze locked on mine. Hit it, Mara, before it hits us. I raised the hammer, hesitated. One carpenter boy of maybe 12 knelt near the edge, whispering. His voice carried, Mom said the night erases the cancer. Please let night take it. The hammer trembled in my grip. I thought of my own mother, early Alzheimer's, who sometimes mistook the moon for a street lamp. A sky without stars would spare her the heartbreak of losing names for every shining thing. Oblivion tempts because remembering hurts. I swung. Wood cracked. Light erupted, vaster than all before. The landing disintegrated. Rope wrenched me upward as the stanchioned anchor moaned. Ira lost hold and vanished below, face serene, almost grateful. The rope threatened to snap. I hauled myself hand over hand until I collided with actual concrete floor, original basement lip still anchored to earth. I rolled onto solid ground as the shaft imploded, stair fragments whipping past into negative space that shrank, folded, vanished with a sound like a single heartbeat, recorded backward. Silence. Dust. My headlamp flickered out. Then faintly, crickets sang outside the shattered basement windows. I crawled up the household stairs and stepped onto the porch into the dawn. And the sky. Oh, the sky had never been so crowded. Stars clung to morning even as sunlight pushed horizon pink. Cassiopeia gleamed whole. Orion poised like a hunter caught in freeze frame. The Milky Way a spill of milk across pale linen. I saw new patterns too, constellations no culture had yet named. Maybe returned from epochs before humans first lifted their gaze. Cars rolled by as if nothing had happened. Radios played pop songs, talk shows. People walked dogs. Nobody stared upward. Maybe they thought the brilliance normal. Or maybe, as Colt promised, memory had slipped while reality reset. I alone remembered the erased night. In my pocket, Ira's notebook vibrated faintly. Heat, not motion. I opened it. The pages were blank save one line scrawled in fresh ink. The stairs will rebuild. Keep watch. I folded the book, tucked it close to my heart, and raised my eyes. For the moment, every light in heaven shone, yet I knew where the abandoned houses stood, where chalk sigils might bloom again. I would be there next time, with hammer, rope, and witness. Someone must remember the stars.